Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Freshly Pressed. Today we have with us Rob Newman, the creator of Future Favors the Bold. Welcome to the show, Rob.
Oh my gosh, it is such a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure having you here. Tell us a bit about yourself and a brief history about yourself.
Yeah, so my background is mostly in comedy. I'm in Toronto, which is where I'm from. I work at a place called the Second City, which is the largest theater dedicated to improv and social and political satire. I also work for the CBC, which is Canada's answer to the BBC. And there I make podcasts, two podcasts, Personal Best, and this other scary fiction show called Limited Capacity. And this has always been a goal of mine. This has always been a dream of mine to write a graphic novel. So you got to put your money where your mouth is, and we're doing it right now with Future Favors the Bold. We're launching a Kickstarter, and within the first 3 hours of launching the Kickstarter, we met our goal, and within 24 hours, we had doubled our goal, and we're on our way
Wow,
to tripling it right now, which is pretty exciting.
that's amazing. That's amazing. You, I, so yeah, that's amazing. And CBC is kind of like, I've seen a lot of CBC shows as well.
Oh, that's
This
cool.
Yeah, isn't Schitt's Creek wasn't it
Schitt's Creek, Kim's
wasn't CBC?
Convenience, um, other shows, other Canadian shows, but Schitt's Creek is definitely CBC.
Yeah. We have our own called ABC, which
Yeah.
is Australian Broadcasting. Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. And so, how did you get into comics in the first place? Like, did you grow up reading them? Did you like reading comics in general?
Yeah, I was pretty big into comics growing up. When I was in grade 6, I got my first comic. Um and I read it a little bit. I would get it at Christmas. I'd get a comic book for Christmas. And then in my early years in high school, 14, 15, I met this guy. I didn't have a ton of friends at the beginning of high school. I met this other guy, and one of our shared interests were comic books. And so that's when it really started for me. That was like every Wednesday, going to our comic store, Heroes World, and grabbing 5 or 6 titles. And so that's pretty much continued throughout my entire life from 14 until now. Comics have always been a huge part of it.
Hmm. That's awesome. Some of that love actually does reflect in the book as well.
Mm.
When I read it full, I read it last night fully end to end, and I read it like three times.
Oh wow.
So yeah, it's beautiful. It's funny. It is a lot of things. So it's very well written. It's very well drawn and colored, and some of the lettering pieces are really like they're really good. They're like they're genius, in fact.
Oh
So
wow.
I absolutely loved it overall, and I think it's such a good book. It's worth every penny put in.
Oh, that's very kind
So
of you to say.
tell us a bit about the book itself.
Yeah, I mean, so the book is about utopian ideals and when they kind of fall short. So the premise of the book is really simple. It's the future. There's no greed. There's no violence. Everyone is very civilized. We've worked out all of our major problems, and things seem to be going pretty great until a bunch of explorers find this old abandoned planet that's been missing for 400 years, and it turns out it was a prison planet. So it's been 400 years of prisoners being able to build their own culture. And so it's really a story about a clash of ideologies, these utopians, and then these very Machiavellian serial killers. And I don't want to give too much away, but it doesn't go well. It doesn't go well. It's
As expected, yeah.
yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, it is. And there's definitely I know you mentioned that in the campaign as well. There's definite parallels to Star Trek
Hmm.
and a lot of pop culture stuff that we already know and see. Um, it's one of my favorite questions as well, and I know I like to put people on the spot. Is what are the top five pop culture things that you like?
Oh
It
my
can be
gosh.
anything, like TV shows or movies or comic books or
I mean,
even your favorite podcast.
my interests are pretty varied. I got a kind of toe in a bunch of different waters, but this book specifically has a love letter to a bunch of different things that I love. Star Trek Next Generation is a huge influence on me. Growing up, that was my number one favorite show. Yes, you're going to see Star Wars in here. The color palette is very much a New Hope that you'll find. So there's a kind of like um, retro, sensible, almost like when we talk about like the 1950s Pleasantville kind of
Mm,
vibe. We're doing that with science fiction, which for me is like the 1970s. A lot of powdered
yeah,
blues in there. Judge Dredd is a huge influence that came later in life. But anytime you're talking about utopias or dystopias, I think Judge Dredd just does it the best. And also, it's so funny. It's such a funny book.
it
Um,
is.
Transmetropolitan. Obviously, this is the satirical part of this. I was thinking about that a lot as I was writing issue after issue, and that's it. I got four. I got four right there.
That's amazing. Uh, which is your favorite Star Wars movie?
What's my favorite Star Wars movie? That's a really hard question. I'd say four, five, six. Because for me growing up, I actually didn't grow up with Star Wars. I probably saw Star Wars really for the first time when I was like maybe like 15 or 16. And so we watched
Mm,
them kind of all together in the same week. So in my brain, it's just one 9 hour movie.
yep.
But so I would say four, five, and six. And you know what? I'm going to do six. I know that's an unpopular thing, but I actually like those teddy bears. I think they're cool,
Yeah.
and I like forests. So no, I'm going to say six.
Yeah, it is a satisfactory finale, right? Like kind of a good bow that ties everything in the end to the
Hmm.
series. So, for all the talk of like being soft part of this of the whole series, it does put things pretty nicely in a package.
Didn't we go through enough? He had to like have his hand cut off. There's so much trauma. Wouldn't it be nice at the end of a 9 hour movie if 3 hours of that last movie was just a nice time? So I
Yeah,
think they nailed it.
exactly.
I think they nailed it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Cool. Do you want to also talk about like what are the rewards and variant covers and things like that? Oh, I love this
Sure.
cover. It's so good.
Yeah, this is actually a crazy story for me. So growing up, one of my big interests was Magic the Gathering. Man, I'm
Mm.
laying it all on the line. These are all my nerdy interests. So I was very into Magic the Gathering growing up, and one of my favorite cards was a card called Living Death, and it's basically
Mm.
a little picture of a bunch of skeletons burying this human alive. And I love that card. It's actually a pretty powerful card. So all my friends were like, "Ooh, you got Living Death." And when I was growing up, I stopped playing Magic because I became super cool, and I lost the card, and it's like one of my biggest heartbreaks. So when I was looking
Mm.
for cover artists, Charlie Gillespie was available. I was like, oh, I love this guy's work. It's so detailed, it's so complex. It kind of gives me this feeling which I really miss, which is the days of
Mm.
old Vertigo. Like you go to the comic book
Mm.
store and you would just see like shelves and shelves of Vertigo books. I was like, that's what I want this book to feel like. So
Yeah.
he was able to do it. I got very, very lucky. And then
Yeah.
later, I kind of put two and two together. And I was looking at his resume, and he drew Living Death. He drew my favorite Magic
Wow.
card when I was a kid, and now he made two covers for Future Favors the Bold.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah, full circle there. Um,
Wow.
so he's done a cover. That's with the main character, and then the next one is with one of my favorite characters named Kyle Savo. Very cool. Love this one. It's a kind of nuts science fair. Um, Local Canadian comics legend Ty Templeton did a cover for
Mm.
me which I really, really love.
Wow.
It's that kind of like retro classic sci-fi look. He's done a bunch of
Hmm.
stuff like Batman Adventures. And then
I love his work.
oh yes, it's so great. And when we were kind of fleshing out um covers, it was so great to also find new artists along the way, just to be like, oh, could we have different interpretations of it? So we have two extra additional alternative covers for you to choose from. So lots of options here cover wise.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is amazing too. I think this gives me a bit of like, this Slither vibes. Do you know that movie Slither?
Oh, Slither.
Uh, yeah, yeah, by
Oh,
James Gunn.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've seen Slither. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of gives me that kind of vibe. The poster of Slither, which
Mm.
is a woman bathing in a tub, and then there's all those alien beings coming out of it. Um, yeah,
Catchy Lee
amazing.
is so incredible. They work so fast and they're also so young. I couldn't believe how great this cover turned out. It was so fun.
No, that's amazing, and I think that's the best part about the book as well. It's very playful and fun.
Mhm.
Despite a lot of bad things happen, but still it doesn't doesn't shy away from having a little fun and quippy and yeah. Um, so yeah, that's great. Tell us a bit about the rewards and well,
Man,
any good rewards you have on the campaign.
I'm hoping. One of the great things about this is figuring out what people want. So we fulfilled our pledge goal right away. Now we're into stretch goals, and this is a whole other world. So I'm really excited to
Yeah.
be like, oh, we get to add extra stuff. It's actually like having a mini campaign in your campaign. But the options are the way we made this book. Actually, I take a step back. The way we made this book was originally my plan was to release these as single issues, 22 pages a piece. But it turns out it's just much better. It makes a lot more sense just to release it as a graphic novel. So this is kind of the first three issues of this series. It's 80
Mm,
pages altogether, maybe even more as we continue this process. Um, and you can get the digital first issue. You can get the digital all three issues if you want. We also offer a trade paperback, which is all the collected editions. We also have single issues. So if you want to collect the single first issue, we have the 5 different variant covers, and you can get that all in the collector's package. Um,
nice.
we're also offering this insane thing, which kind of slipped in right at the end of the rewards, which is if you would like to appear in future Favors of Bold, you are able to. We will draw a 3-page comic with your likeness of you being murdered, and it will go into the edition. My friend suggested this to me, and I was like, "Yeah, okay. No one's going to sign up for this, but if you'd like the top tier reward, I will hire an artist to draw you, and you will be murdered so violently for everyone to see. So that's an option for you.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. I know a few people do those rewards now. Not the murder ones, but at least drawing people's likeness into the comics. And some of them have still characters, or some of them have like a background character. Some of them have those people as like talking characters, which obviously costs more because you have to write them into the script and stuff like that. But yeah, it's amazing. Like if people just want to have there been any backers for that?
Someone reached out to me and said, "Oh, I'm really interested in this. Is there some way of us doing a kind of like exchange in like a pledge exchange?" And because the book is already written, we would be creating a brand new story. So I have to like
Yeah,
pay all of the artists for it. So really, that reward doesn't really make a ton of money. I just think it's really, really funny. So
yeah,
no one
yeah.
has taken
No,
us up yet, but after this podcast, who knows? Sky's the limit.
I know exactly. I'm pretty sure it is somebody's going to take it up. It's an incredible award.
I mean, I'm actually a little bit nervous too because I'm gonna have to think of a story. It's basically a game of chicken that I'm playing with you right now because I'm like,
Yeah,
no one's gonna take this top tier, and if you do, I have to write a 3-page story. So I'm
and
nervous.
also the biggest part of it would be a very creative kill, right? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, you have to find a very creative way to kill somebody.
Yeah, and like I mean, I think it's nice if if you're writing a story and you kind of put someone's face in the background. But I think for me,
Mm.
the only way that this is a real good time is if you're the
Yeah,
main
yeah, yeah,
character getting murdered. Like
yeah,
you got to be the main
exactly.
character.
Awesome. Tell us a bit about your your process. How far along do you plan your arcs, and do you? I know you told us about like how you wrote this as three different issues, but how far along have you planned this thing?
I mean, so for me, I think we're 8 issues deep in the script, and for a long time, I would just write a script just because I had to, and I would just save it on my computer. The production part of actually making this book came a little bit later. And as for the planning of the arc, like generally, I have an idea of things that I'm very interested in having happen. But I also have this thing as a writer. I don't know if people like think about it like writing an essay where they're like, oh, here's what I want to say, and here's like maybe this character could be good, and they're like trying and testing out a bunch of stuff. That's not really how writing works for me. For
Hmm.
me, writing kind of feels like being a satellite dish, and all of a sudden someone dumps a whole bunch of characters on your lap, and you go, this is the story, write it now. And so
Yeah.
um, if you ask me, oh, well, why does this happen? And what does this mean? I'd be like, I don't know. The alien just told me I had to write it. Like it's as surprising to me as probably to people reading it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's amazing. That's such a unique unique take on writing itself.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I think there's really no way to figure out if you have a viable product until you write the thing. Because in your head, it's always perfect, and then when you try and
Yeah.
execute it, is when you have the issues. So I only share the things where I'm like, oh, that worked out okay, and the things that were beamed into my head. There's a whole folder on my computer of stuff that people should never see.
Those abstract ideas that you write down just because they pop up in your head randomly, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, a big part of this is I can share this piece. I mean, the real nugget of this idea came from I was flying back from Mexico City to Toronto, and I had drawn this picture of this like weird guy, and he just had a little word bubble saying, "Welcome to my planet full of serial killers." That's how this whole thing started. Um, and then from there, I kind of worked backwards.
That's amazing. A planet of serial killers. That's really hilarious.
Mhm.
No, that's. Do you also kind of deliberately incorporate comedy into it? Like I know humor is a huge part of the book, but did you intend it to be comedy in the first place as well?
No, I mean, yes, but also no. Like, I think because comedy is such a big part of my life that I don't really think about trying to be funny. I also don't
Hmm.
try and necessarily be political. Those things just kind of happen on their own. Um, and I don't really know what a book or a story written by me without something that makes me laugh in it would look like. Um, yeah, so I think the comedy is just kind of my personality.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think like comic books are less are not like movies or TV shows where you need a consistent, especially Western TV, Western movies and stuff where we
Hmm.
need a consistent tone throughout the movie. We can have all sorts of stuff. We can just insert random jokes and funny kills and things like that to
Yeah, I
yeah.
think I think this is also true about like TV now, where it's like it used to feel like consistency was a big part of it. Like every show was kind of had the same formula. Law and Order feels like Law and Order every time you watch it. I just finished watching Star Trek: Strange New Worlds, and that's wild. Season 2 was
Yeah.
wild. What's happening? It's like one episode
Mm.
they're talking about war crimes, and like the trauma of war, and then the next episode's like a musical. And you're like, okay,
Wow.
all right.
Have you watched any of the Paramount Plus shows on Star Trek, like Picard or
Oh yeah,
Discover?
yeah,
Oh, no, Discovery was Netflix.
yeah. So I think I probably have seen um, all Star Trek. I I dropped out a little bit during Enterprise. I dropped out a
Mm.
lot during Discovery, but everything else I've seen every episode of, including DS9, which I don't even really like as a show, but I've seen every episode because I felt a kind of responsibility to understand what was
Yeah,
happening.
yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah, Star Trek kind of has that kind of loyalty, right, to it. When you start watching it, you're like, I have to finish this thing. However long it takes, it can take like a year of my life, but then or
and
two.
it and the history is so deep. So like part of this book is it does a bunch of things. It's comic books, science fiction, Star Trek. It's also horror, and so I'm doing a bunch of different shows right now to promote the book. And I thought I knew a lot about Star Trek: The Next Generation. If you go on a Star
Mm.
Trek podcast, it will be revealed really quickly how little you know. I was in interviews going like, "Have I ever seen the show before?" Like I can name the name of every episode, tell you what season it's from, but like I was just like I couldn't breathe. I couldn't generate enough Star Trek knowledge to sustain myself in a conversation.
The TNG is my favorite too. Like of all
Mm.
the, like, at least the classic Star Trek I've seen, or no, of all time actually. I haven't watched. I dropped off completely in Discovery. Like I couldn't watch it after like three episodes. Like it just doesn't have the right essence to it. I don't know why. Like it's nothing on the shows. Like it's brilliantly acted and everything. It's just that it's something missing. That kind of feeling.
Well, I mean, I
Um,
think a show like Star Trek, it does so many different things, and when we start to change the formula, it strengthens something. So I'm sure there's certain Star Treks that are people's favorites, but it doesn't quite do what I'm here for Star Trek. Like DS9 didn't work for me, not because it wasn't a great
yeah,
show, but for me, it's about exploring new worlds. And in those worlds, they are alien and they don't have our values. And somehow we have to figure out a solution. And they
yeah,
sit around a
yeah,
big table and they debate. And
yeah,
Worf always says, let's fight them. And Beverly always says, let's surrender to them. And somewhere along the way, we have to kind of figure out a compromise. And that's that's like a very provocative point of view for a show to have. I can't think of another show that's
yeah,
about compromise and understanding in the way that Star Trek is.
yeah.
So I think every franchise probably does something different and probably is different for other people.
Yeah, I think that's also in a way a good thing. Like there's so many different kind of directors and writers who've got a chance to explore Star Trek in their own way. Even like I really I didn't love it, but I really appreciated what like the whole J.J. Abrams trilogy kind of did, especially the
Mm-hmm.
finale, like the third movie, which I loved more than the first two.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you like, Simon Pegg seems like a genuine fan of Star Trek, and he just wrote it with so much love.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it did felt something which was like probably closest to the Star Trek lore. I don't know what you think about it.
I mean, those Kelvin movies are incredible. If for only the reason that I have a 10-year-old son, and I tried to get him
Yeah.
into Star Trek, and it was really important to me because me and my dad watched Star Trek growing up, and I was like, oh, this is a rite of passage. And I showed him this one episode called Best of Both Worlds. It's an episode where Captain Picard, Patrick Stewart, he gets turned into a robot zombie, the Borg,
Mm, mm.
and he wasn't into it. It wasn't biting at all. And I was like, this is the best episode. It's got zombies. It's so scary. A 10-year-old should love this. And he just
Yeah.
wasn't into it. But the Kelvin movies and Star Trek Prodigy, that did a lot of heavy lifting for me. So we're
Yeah.
wearing him down. We're gonna make him a Star Trek fan by the time he turns 18.
That's amazing. That's really cool. Um, no, I think that's great. What? What are the future projects you have planned? Are you going to continue the story into another edition of the graphic novel, or any other spin-offs or other stories planned?
I would love to keep writing these stories. So, the margins on a Kickstarter are not super huge, but the plan is basically anything that we make from this is going to go into more stories. So, hopefully, this can sustain itself. If you want to spend more time in the Future Favors the Bold universe, you can by signing up. Beyond that, there's other projects I'm super interested in doing, kind of seeing the landscape of how comics work. Um, it can be a little bit overwhelming. Like the jobs at my day jobs, comedy, and then working in TV and film, and then working in podcasts. These are
Yeah,
three industries that are not easy to get into. And somehow I managed to work my way into all of them, but nothing feels like comic books. Comic books feel so hard to break into,
yeah,
and it's so much work. Even like launching this Kickstarter, it is my full-time job doing the
yeah,
Kickstarter.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
future projects, yes, there's a superhero book I'm really excited about. I'd love to do a reinterpretation of Mesopotamian mythology. I'd love to give people a clean version of some of those great myths, but
Nice.
that's down the line, I think.
No, that's cool. I have been reading a lot from Canadian writers lately. I read about. Do you know Bullet Adventures?
I think I
It's
should.
Yeah, Bullet Adventures is Canadian. It's like a superhero series about a speedster, kind of like Flash, and
Okay.
yeah, it's a homegrown Toronto-based company that like the guy who writes it. And there's this book called Trakovi. I don't know if you've read that one. It's really good. It's published by Scout now.
Okay.
Um, yeah, it's based in Edmonton. It's so steeped in Edmonton, like the whole like the story and the characters, and you like it even has like music for, like real locations from Edmonton and things like that.
Whoa.
um it's amazing, like some of those, like a lot of punk rock in that book as well. um Really creative books coming out of Canada at the moment, so yeah.
Here I was thinking you're going to say Zdarsky or Jeff Lemire, and you have these very cool, very hip books that I need to go check out now. That's very awesome. I'm very interested to know what your impression of Edmonton was from reading these books. Because have you been to Edmonton before?
No, I haven't been to it,
That's wild to me that you're halfway around the world being like, I know a little bit about Edmonton, Alberta.
but when I was reading that book, I was like, this feels like a real location. So I actually Google mapped it, and I was like, holy crap, this is a real shop. This is like real people running those shops. So it's amazing how they've been written as these characters in the book. So yeah, it's done really well. Yeah.
Oh, there's real people in the book and you can find them online and it's really them.
I presume so. Like it felt
That's so
like
funny.
yeah, it's really good. Yeah, yeah. And it's woven into like this super villain story. It's story about super villains and things like that. So yeah, it's very well done.
Um yeah, I mean Canada has a really great history of comics. I always feel like I guess because we're so close to America, it always feels like we're the underdog. It feels like we aren't quite competitive. But if you look at how small our country is, which is we're 10% of the population of America, we're the same size as the state of California. We definitely hit above our weight class. So anytime I see a Canadian doing something really cool, I'm always wowed. I think it's so awesome.
Yeah. No, no, definitely, definitely. I like the unique point of view. Like it stands out from American point of view for sure, because there's a different um how would I say, like I would say like the approach to the material is quite different. If you see it from like the Canadian standpoint, I feel
Yeah.
like. Canadians value their like their culture and their surroundings a lot more, and I think that that kind of shows the love for where they live, where they grew up, and things like that. So yeah.
Canada also has this weird thing because we are so close to America and we're so similar to America that for the most part we seem like we're one of them. And so,
Yeah.
especially in comedy, we do really really well because people go, "Oh, well, there's Rob Norman. He's like a improviser, just like any other improviser." But there's something not quite right about him. Like there's something a little bit off, and I can't really figure out what it is. Maybe it's how he pronounces his O's, but it's so subtle I can't quite figure it out. And so
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
people end up going like, "Oh, well, I know nothing about Rob Norman or the Canadians, but we as
yeah,
Canadians know everything about America." So we come
yeah,
into the the, the culture and the politics very very well read. We know a
yeah.
lot about it, and the people who we're interacting with know very little but about us. So that's the superpower of being Canadian. We're like the thing, but not quite the thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's awesome. No, that's great.
And you
Awesome.
are
We
you in Australia? Is that right?
Yeah, I'm in
Oh,
Australia.
cool. What
Yeah.
what are like the top books in Australia? Who are the local creators that you're like, oh, this person is the person?
Ooh, good
Oh,
question. It's a hard one.
pressure.
No, I do love, so like I've read a lot of Australian creators. David Hazan is probably one of the topmost ones, I think, at the moment. David Hazan and Christoph Vokax. They've written a few amazing books more recently.
Hmm.
I don't know if you've read Scout. Scout came up with Death Drop Drag Assassin. I don't know if you've read that one.
No,
It's
not
like
yet.
so it's a drag queen vigilante, basically. That's kind of the story, and it's done really well. It's a he also has some other books published. Oh, I don't know if you know Nottingham. Nottingham is Tales from Nottingham and Nottingham,
No.
published by Matt Cave. Oh, you must read it. It's bloody. It's gory. Um, it's Nufsen. I think you must read it. I don't want to spoil anything for you from Nottingham. You must definitely read it.
I'm
um,
excited.
Yeah, David's based in Melbourne. I think he's incredible.
Mm.
There's Tim McEwen. I met him last week at the Comic Con in Sydney. I picked up all 8 issues of his book called Raging Bull: The Greener Pastures. It is
Hmm.
about like a super powered bull, and it's funny. It's all ages, kind of like it's a comedy about a bull trying to be a sports person. Um, yeah, it's really well done as well. It has a lot of like it's laced with Australian humor. We have a very unique lingo here in Australia.
Mm.
So yeah, it's laced with that. I love Killaroo. Killaroo is kind of like science fiction slash creature feature. So it's this super powered kangaroo who yeah, a kangaroo gets experimented on, and he becomes like a, a killer for hire.
Love
So
it.
yeah, it's so good. It's lovely schlock. It's so well done. It's yeah, it's so good to read. And yeah, more recently there's a lot of like indigenous creators as well, who have come in, and I love how they're telling their indigenous stories as well.
Hmm.
There's a TV show that got adapted as a comic book called Cleverman.
Hmm.
It's a show produced by SBS, which is like a local TV network, and it is science fiction slash dystopian kind of thing where they've shown like uh, the indigenous people of Australia are in future they're obviously they've drawn parallels to them, and these people called hairy people, and like they're like the lower strata of the society in the book, and how they fight back, and um, with prophecies and all the science fiction dystopian stuff built in. Yeah,
That's
there's
so
plenty of good
cool.
books too. Yeah.
I think this is one thing that comics do really, really well is like taking really difficult political issues and making it palatable for us in certain ways. Like you kind of talking about, this kind of dystopian future, talking about land rights and things that are really hard, difficult conversations for us to have. But all of a sudden, when you transpose it to the future, you got some bright colors, we got panels. All of a
Yeah.
sudden, it feels manageable. I think that's like such an
Yeah.
important thing for us to have conversations about tricky things. Is like to be able to have the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And with like, I also love the kind of diversity in books as well.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter's reading this book, and I keep telling this as well, that it's not something that a 5 year old should read, but she's reading it anyway. She's reading this run from DC Rebirth, DC Universe Rebirth,
Mm-hmm.
of Green Lanterns, which introduces Jessica Cruz and Simon Baz as the Green Lanterns.
Mm-hmm.
Have you read those? The one where I think the Red
I
Lanterns, they plant a red seed and there's a hell tower, and they, do you know that one? That one?
I would have dipped into it. I can picture the panels. I don't think I was reading it regularly, but I definitely know what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. So I think like the character of Jessica Cruz has made that character of Green Lantern so accessible. Like my
Mm.
5 year old can actually relate to Green Lantern, which is bizarre. Like a lot of adults are actually not able to relate to Green Lantern at times, but like my 5 year old found a way to relate to
Mm-hmm.
a Green Lantern comic book, because a character, like, she could look up to Jessica because Jessica is like a nervous wreck. She's also like, she's funny, she's quippy, she's a Latina, like, she's brown like us. And yeah, it makes a hell lot of difference with those kind of characters coming in, make it
Yeah.
relatable to people. Yeah.
And it's also interesting, like now the industry of making comics, it's not really possible to make. I mean, it is possible, but it's not very common to make a comic with everyone in the same city. So the
Mm,
person who does the bulk of the art is this guy named CJ Camba. He's from Argentina. We talk entirely through email. He does not speak English. He reads and writes it quite well, but he doesn't talk a lot in English. Our colorist is in was in Russia, and then we had another one in Brazil, and then we have a letterer in England. Like it's so spread out. There's so many different people who go into making the book that you end up with like all of these different ideas kind of colliding. And working with CJ was so great because there's little details that he adds, like for example, we have this character whose name is the Doctor. Her name is Dr. Ebony
mm,
Pulse, and it was very important to him that she look a certain way. He was like, I want this character to look like the women who I grew up with, and so he was like, here's the character design. It's really important that she looks like this, and I think that's so cool. It made the book so
yeah,
much better. It gave the character a different look than maybe I had originally imagined, but I definitely fell in love with her. So,
that's
um,
amazing.
yeah, yeah, and it was a character who I thought might actually leave us. Like I didn't imagine them being around for a very long time, and I love the character so much we found a way to kind of bring her back. So, yeah, yeah, the different perspectives and the different people being involved
Mm.
just makes books better.
I absolutely agree on that. Yeah, I've spoken to a few people, and like every time, like they tell that they hire somebody from a different culture, they bring in something unique from their own culture, and like their own point of view, and that makes the book a bit richer, every
Hmm.
single time. So yeah.
Yeah, Toronto is a place that is so. I think it might still be the most diverse place in the world. I think you just kind of take it for granted that you have like all these different people, all these different cultures, all the different food. Oh, the food's so good here. Um, all in one spot. And I really don't know how good I got it until I leave. And I go, oh, not everywhere is like this.
Yeah, very true, very true. if you drive down south to Milwaukee.
Yeah, yeah, it's going to be a bit different. It's going to be a bit different there.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. I think even Sydney, for that matter, is so multicultural. Like we have so much good food here. Like even
Mm-hmm.
Melbourne, like it's so many different. And I think they've what's happened is I don't know about Toronto, but like at least in Sydney, that a lot of like these cultural things have evolved, like Western culture and say like Eastern culture has fused into some and created something new, like almost like a new cuisine, and like it's amazing like how good all of that is. Like I just love it.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. Like I spent maybe a week and a half in Sydney. I was doing some shows and some workshops with ITS, which is Improv Theater Sydney. And yeah, walking the streets, I'm like, this feels exactly like Toronto, just like the upside down. It's like instead
Yeah.
of it being really cold, it's really warm. And instead of birds in the sky, there's bats, and the bats are out to kill me. Um,
Wow,
that's the
that's
only difference.
amazing.
I was like, whoa, there's a lot of birds. And my friend was like,
Yeah,
those are bats. And I was like, cool joke. But that's a lot of birds. He's like, no, those are literally bats. And I went,
yeah.
okay, I have to get on a plane right now and go home.
We literally have three kinds of birds here. Obviously, bats. You're right. The other one is seagulls, which all three of them are nasty. By the
Okay.
way,
Yeah.
seagulls are nasty. You can't sit with fish and chips when seagulls
Mm-hmm.
are around. They will
Mm-hmm.
just eat up every single bite of it. And ibis. I don't know if you know ibis. They're called bin chickens here. That's the lingo.
Whoa.
Because they're like the scavengers. Like you can see ibis just going through every trash can in the city, just picking up trash, uh, just dumpster diving all the garbage, and just yeah, spreading litter all across the city. It's crazy.
That's
Yeah,
wild.
yeah.
Um, yeah, we have seagulls too, so that's not a surprise to me. I think this is if I were to make a good argument that Batman is Australian. I think I think the amount of bats in Sydney prove it because in every show you see it, he's like, "There's bats flying around." Well, that's not happening
Yeah.
in New York.
No.
He's Australian. Batman is set in Australia, and for some reason, everyone's doing a weird pretend accent. So
That's such a good thing to say. Yeah, yeah. I accept that. I
okay,
totally accept that. Yeah. Awesome. We're coming to time, but thanks for coming on the show. It was such a blast. I had a
pleasure.
great time. Yeah.
I think this is like the best part of this job, which is like, oh yeah, part of my job today is talking to a new friend about comics. Can't get any better than that. My wife's like, "Are you gonna
Absolutely.
do the dishes?" I'm like, "I can't. I'm doing my job. I have to talk about Batman for a while, about Batman being Australian. That's my responsibility for the family." So
Yeah.
that's the number one reason to start a Kickstarter because you're allowed to do all the things you want to do anyways.
Yeah. Absolutely. Great book, great campaign. I would definitely back this, and I would, ask everyone to back this as well. This is a beautiful book. Get all 80 pages of it. It's incredible. Do you want to take 2 minutes and just talk about the book and make a pitch real quick?
Yeah, I would love to. I mean, this book for me is the special years in the comic shop where you would go in and you would see all of the Top Cow, all your favorite Vertigo books, all the books that you would read, and you're like, I don't think I should be reading this. I think if my parents find this book, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. That's what this book is. If you like comedy, if you like politics, if you like murder, you will get a lot of it. You're going to get two issues, the first two issues together, and then also Tales of the Bold, which is a bunch of like almost like Tharg's Future Shock or like small three-story arcs that you can read through that are just a lot of fun stories that we wanted to tell but didn't quite fit in the wasn't quite a 30-page story. We've also added that, so there's lots of fun. And if you get in now, I think the stretch goals are going to get nuts for this. We are at triple of what we originally planned on. So we have a lot of leeway to offer some pretty cool extras.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Do check out the book and the Kickstarter campaign. I will link it in the description of the video and we'll put it on the socials as well. Thanks a lot for coming on the show, Rob. I really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.